Ladies and gentlemen, we have a rather large interview courtesy of PC Gamer with one Mr. Ian Hazacostas, the lead game director of World of Warcraft, and inside that were a couple of tidbits which are very relevant to a lot of discussion the community has been having and we have been having on the channel. So I think it's well worth digging into this and throwing some thoughts into there, and also include some stuff I've been hearing on the grapevine from people who are involved. So the first big tidbit that we got here was that the next big content patch for the Shadowlands will be around spring. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see that delayed a little bit. As you guys are aware, the Shadowlands was delayed. They had to push back the release of the game and work super mega overtime in order to get the game in a workable state to release. And for the most part, they've done an absolutely fantastic job with that. There are a couple of tidbits that we're not happy with, like Solash on alts, Torghast in general, and there's some other issues here and there. But overall, the experience and the systems are actually fine. They're actually working okay. The soulbinds are working okay. And what they don't need to do, and I think this is where some people might have seen the spring announcement, like they said it's going to be around spring, which is in line with their usual release dates of the major patches. These are the 0.1s, the 0.2s, and 0.3s, and so on. That is in line with that. Again, I think it might be delayed a little bit, and I'm okay with that as well. What they don't need to do compared to BFA is redesign one of those systems from the ground up and then come up with something brand new. If you remember, at this stage in BFA, this was about the time, this couple of months after launch, where the horrors of Azerite armor were really settling in on a wide array of the player base. And therefore, they had to go to significant lengths to try and just change that system out and put something in more interesting, more exciting, something players weren't going to be angry with, and overhaul the Azerite system entirely. Their focus in development time was purely on there. Again, comparatively, if we look at Legion, Legion didn't work that way. Legion's launched with some problems, but overall, the systems in place were actually fine. And then they could focus their entire development process on new stuff, adding on to that, just building on the foundation, correcting some issues without having to rebuild the system, and then grow it into something better based on feedback. That's where we are with Shadowlands. And that means that what we should be getting in the spring should be very, very cool stuff. Now, they may delay it a little bit, or they may push something back into a later patch, so something that won't be finished for 0.1 because of time, and they do want to release it in around that period of the year. They may push that to a 0.2 or something like that. Not saying they will, just saying that they're definitely going to be pushed for time because they lost a lot of development time in trying to get the Shadowlands actually ready. But it should be good stuff. I saw a lot of doom and gloom going around. It's like, oh, spring, it seems so far away. I don't think you should look at it that way, personally. I think you should look at it as like, this game is in a pretty good state right now. It's very popular. We've been looking at how many people are playing. Retention seems very, very good, at least from what we can tell from the numbers we've been getting. So it looks to me like they can focus so much of their dev time into creating brand new stuff and building on it. And Ian goes on to mention that they're very happy with the story. They're going to try and correct some things that seem a little bit odd. I would not be surprised to see something that gives more flesh and bone as to why the Covenants are separated. Or maybe they're going to start merging them later on because it doesn't make sense. Something along those lines in order to sort of correct these obvious sort of glaring holes in the way the Shadowlands is working. So we might see that. It's been an ongoing problem since the beta of people realizing that, and obviously a lot more people have realized that. But for the most part, it should all be expansion on existing systems, which is the plan for the Shadowlands. That was the whole plan. Release all the systems at once, and then build on them afterwards, instead of the BFA, make one system, it's broken, try and fix that system by 0.1, and then still not have it really be good, and keep adding new systems onto it in order to try and correct the path or change the trajectory of what's going on. This time around, they should be going with a more Legion approach, which I'm all for and very happy with, where they can just build on everything they've got. So I think that's pretty good news. We can look forward to that in the spring or something along those lines. Next up is loot. So again, it's kind of throwaway line, but reading between the lines of how it is to speak with Ian, you can kind of get a lot of data from here. So loot has been a big issue for plenty of players, including myself, in how it's working, particularly in the PvE world. We do have our data, as promised, that was provided by Radar.io for what players have been doing with their playtime since the Shadowlands launched. And we do have the video coming up on that, so please stay tuned for it. It's just a lot of data to get through in order to be accurate with it. But what we could see is things like Mythic Plus, in general, there hasn't been a huge uptick in people taking part on it from the very first week. In fact, you would say that it's kind of remained relatively stagnant. Now, you wouldn't ordinarily expect to see that. What you would expect to see is as people get a little bit more gear, they start doing a little bit more Mythic Plus and things like that. But that is not happening. What is happening, though, is the people who do Mythic Plus to get the rewards because they need them or they feel they need them, those guys are still doing that, but the rest of the player base has shifted entirely, almost exclusively, over to PvP. And that's because the PvP system is just way, 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 way better than the PvE systems that are currently in game. Obviously, with Mythic Plus not rewarding even heroic level gear for putting in max effort, heroic being very, very scarce in dropping items, compared to PvP where you can specifically target things, you always get a reward working towards your goal, whether you win or lose. All those aspects that also give you a weekly chest because of the way the new guild vault works has been a far superior source. And the fact that you can do it solo, and that's a big deal as well. You can do it entirely solo if you want. If you just want to work on your character, it may not be the fastest system, but it's a guaranteed system. In comparison to these other systems like pugging, Mythic Plus, pugging raiding, those kinds of things, which are big time investments that also do not guarantee any form of reward whatsoever for completing them. It is really not surprising to see that they feel PvP is working well. I take that as also to mean that's where most players are. We also believe that to be the case based on the activity numbers we've seen in other areas of the game. People want items. They want to make sure that when they get to log in, the more casual players who do not have hours and hours a day to play, they're going to PvP. Because PvP is just guaranteeing what they want to have. Now, also, we did say last week that it seems a bit like a science experiment. I was not convinced they were going to stick with the current loot system, and that looks to be the case. So it looks like they're going to address it. And the wording kind of indicates badges, or some sort of dismantling / scrapping system. Their wording is, we want to make it better for when you're targeting a specific piece from something like Mythic Plus and you continuously don't get it. The answer to that is quite obvious in my eyes, which is they're going to provide some sort of badges or something. So if you keep running a dungeon and you don't get what you want, you are going to get something eventually. I'm fine with that. I am totally fine with that. I think that is absolutely okay. That is something I would love to see right now, is some sort of badge system that works towards certain items. So even if you get, say, more badges for a higher Mythic Plus, less badges for a lower, somebody who does a lot of lowers can eventually get a very good piece of gear. If you recall our gearing video from last week, one of the points I made is we should really, really have something for casual players to chase. Because you can't just have nothing. You can't just have it's only PvP, which a lot of players don't want to do, but it's guaranteed, so of course they're going to do it, versus getting nothing at all or getting stuff that's below a heroic pug. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's too far of a leap between the mythic at the top end and everybody else. It's just too far of a jump. And also, as we've seen, and I'm sure you guys have noticed, gear level in the Shadowlands is absolutely extraordinarily important. It's actually quite scary how powerful the power difference is between a 210 and a 220 is a huge, huge gap in terms of how much power those guys are carrying with that bit of item level. So it really seems exciting to me that they're actually going to work into this. I definitely foresee some sort of badge system coming, Valor upgrade system, something along those lines that will enable people who are running these, not getting a reward, but still having the PvP side effect, which is it doesn't matter if I win or lose, because eventually I win. And that's okay. That's a totally okay system to go with. So those are the two big talking points there. I've linked the article down below, but again, there's not a huge amount of detail there, but you can see the indication of where they're going with it. And both of the things that I think are important here are very, very exciting. So I hope you guys find it that way too, and hopefully that gives us something to look forward to. All right, guys? Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.